Hey guys, happy spring. Happy Beltane, actually. We made it through the winter, which, not gonna lie, the end of winter was getting a little rough mentally, physically. I was just such a hermit, and I'm just so happy that the weather is changing and my energy is renewed. And I thought it would be nice to catch up with you all and do a little quick gouache sketch because I haven't done that in a while, and I get a lot of requests for new videos. So thank you all for being patient. I've been keeping really busy by streaming on my Twitch channel and just working on tons of personal work. My husband recently got promoted and has been working longer hours, so I've actually been filling more time with working offline, working for myself, and it's actually felt really, really good. I just feel like I'm kind of on to something new and exciting, and I'll show you guys a quick preview of some of my latest work after the sketch video. Today's gouache sketch is a scene from sky. It's actually a photo I took from the Neast Point and facing south. So it's like cliffs in the distance right alongside the ocean, and it's just one of my favorite places in the world. It's amazing. And I thought it would be fun to do a 2-page spread because I haven't done that in this sketchbook yet. So I just started off with a quick sketch using a watercolor pencil. It's something that I've been doing a little more lately, is trying to get the forms laid in with a watercolor pencil, and then usually that just kind of disappears by the end of the painting because it's water soluble. I'll throw the photo that I used up in the top left just so you guys can quickly get an idea. And this is actually a compilation photo made of 3 different photos. I just threw them together in Photoshop so I could make this longer panoramic type ratio. So like all my sketches in this sketchbook, I stuck with the primary colors, and I did add in a tiny bit of navy blue and this deep green color because I wanted to get like a slightly more turquoise in the water. But I primarily used the primaries to mix the rest of the colors. And I used a little more saturation in the sky than what the photo showed because I wanted it to be just a little more spring-like, I guess. I have just been loving the spring colors lately. Lots of vibrant greens and bright blue skies. And while it still is cold, and it actually hailed a couple days ago, it's just been really amazing lately. And I know you guys all probably agree that spring is just the best after a really long winter. My strategy for the sketch was to lay in from the background forward. So I started off with just a really loose, wet sky so that it would kind of dry all blurry and just remain out of focus in the background. And then I started mixing the distant cliffs, which actually were much more of a bluish lilac type color. And I just started off with a combination of my blues, whites, a little bit of black, a little bit of the navy, and then I added in some red to get more of a lavender. But I realized at this point that I wanted to use my smaller brush. And although most of the sketches in this sketchbook, actually all of them I think, were done with my larger brush, for some of the rest of the pages, I was going to try to use my smaller brushes once in a while to try to get a little bit more precision. Since I only have about 8 pages left in the sketchbook, I thought I might as well use them wisely. And since one of the things I want to focus on lately is doing a combination of controlled chaos and realism, I am trying to be a little more strategic with my studies as well. So making a nice balance between something that's a little more wild, but also has areas that are more focused, more detailed, more highly rendered, more realistic, is one of the things that I'm trying to do going forward. Sorry, I haven't made a narration video in a while, so I feel a little out of practice. And as I get closer to the foreground in those cliffs, I just started adding a little more paint and a little less water to build up the opacity. I still was using a tiny bit of white to keep it a little more chalky looking and a little more faded, because if you look at the reference photo, the distant cliffs kind of have a haze to them, and then the foreground is just really vibrant and really high contrast. Oh, and something I want to point out is that I've been noticing with my gouache, I have never used any brand except Holbein or Winsor & Newton artist gouache, and both of them are extremely creamy and like luscious. I don't know if that's the right term, but they're just really, really wonderful. However, I've had my gouache for about 2 years maybe, even though I haven't used it that whole time. So they've been in the tubes for that long, and I've recently started noticing that my Holbein especially has been getting a little bit more stiff right out of the tube. So some of the colors that I use less often, I open the tube and I can like barely squeeze it out. So that's interesting. And it's the higher end expensive stuff too, so that was kind of surprising. Then again, I guess it's not meant to last a lifetime, so I've decided that I'm going to try to use up the rest of it within the next year, well, especially this year. But if anyone else has had that experience, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or if it's normal, I guess. But the only way it affects the painting process is that it's a little bit harder to get a really long brushstroke with thick paint. Because it's so stiff, I have to thin it down with water a little bit more. So those colors I tend to use more for the transparent areas, or the areas that I'm layering a lot. So that's a little inconvenient, but it's just something that I've been dealing with lately. And as you can see now, I'm getting into the closer cliffs, so I'm adding a little more contrast, a little more darkness, and really trying to define the edges, not letting it get so blurry and watery. And I start off with doing the darker areas, because then I know I can layer up on top of that with the brighter grassy, it's like a yellowish green color that defines the fields or the grasses that are growing on the cliffs. So starting off with more of the dark rock color and then layering on the lighter tones. And I'm still using that smaller brush because it's a slightly smaller area back there. But just longer brush strokes, thicker paint at this point. You can see the white of the paper showing through because I am using thicker paint and not really like laying in a huge wash of color right away. Zoom in a little so you can see a little easier. So I wonder, what's everyone up to lately? I haven't talked to you guys in a while. I was getting kind of burned out on doing vlogs over the winter. It was nice to fill some of the downtime of winter, since I wasn't going outside as much, with making the videos. It kind of kept me going and helped me keep my energy up and stuff, but it was getting to be a lot of work. And since I don't make money from YouTube, unfortunately, I can't devote that much time to it. Although I really enjoy making videos and sharing the process, but I do that on Twitch many times a week. So if you're ever interested in hearing more or seeing more of the process, definitely come hang out with me on Twitch. It's obviously free. You don't have to sign up for anything unless you want to actually chat with me in the chat. Then you have to make a name on Twitch and sign up with your email. But it's really fun, and I've actually met quite a few of you guys. Some of you have stopped by and said hi, and that's really cool. And another thing that I've been up to lately is I've been once again practicing drawing people, characters, creatures, stuff like that. And I've been using Mermaid as a motivation, I guess. I really want to eventually illustrate my stories, and I keep trying and giving up on drawing people and characters. So art challenges like Mermaid, if you don't know what Mermaid is, It's a month-long challenge in May where you draw a mermaid every day. However, since I don't have that much time, I am drawing 13 total, so a modified version of mermaid. And you draw either whatever kind of mermaids you want, or you use a prompt list. Like I made a prompt list for mine, and if you want, I'll post the link below if you want to follow my progress on that. But it's kind of fun and something completely outside of my comfort zone, and I'm definitely a little self-conscious about it, but it is motivating to do these art challenges because there's thousands of artists around the world that are doing it. And when you post a mermaid image online, like on Instagram or something, and you use the hashtag, you can all find each other. And so it's really fun to watch what everyone else is doing, and you can get some like encouragement that way. So that's another thing that's been keeping me busy, and it's only been, a few days since that started, but already I can see an improvement in my, at least in the anatomy. And I am between doing the mermaid sketches. I try to do an hour each night of just anatomy sketches, like gesture drawing. And that really seems to help. And the cool thing is that a lot of landscape artists that I follow, like famous landscape artists, plein air artists, they all say that figure drawing will improve your painting no matter what. So if you're a landscape artist and you practice figure drawing, you will improve drastically. And I think that just goes back to the fact that figures are one of the hardest subjects to draw, because you can't just, do some organic blob to represent something like you can in landscapes. You have to draw it, and the eye knows when it's wrong. Like the viewer knows when something is out of proportion or out of scale or out of perspective. It's just so obvious to our human mind. So that's a really, really good challenge, and hopefully I'll have the benefit of improving elsewhere in my art. But it's definitely motivating to know that it's not just a random challenge or a random task that I'm doing. It's eventually going to help me actually illustrate my stories. And I'm working on a couple different stories at the same time because I'm so slow with writing. I can only work on it for like an hour a week at the most. But eventually, once they're written, I do want to illustrate them. I just love storytelling, visual storytelling, illustration, and even though it's not my bread and butter, it's something that I find myself doing often in my free time and in my sketch sessions. So back to the painting here, I'm now really close to being done, and since I'm in the foreground, closest to the viewer, I am adding in my warmer tones and trying to use my big brush again to really represent the long sweep of that landscape in the foreground. And just adding a variation of the warm tones that I see in that reference photo, like the brownish, reddish, rusty tones. And then I come back in on top of that with the lighter colors wherever I want to like emphasize the highlights on the grasses or on the moss. Doing this perspective is a little tricky because you have the cliffs that kind of go down into the water in the distance. Even though they're in the foreground, they're still pretty far away. And then you have this like ledge that I was standing on when I took the photo, really close to the center of the page. So trying to get that separation between the ledge and the distant lower shoreline is a little bit challenging. But that's why we do these studies, right? So one thing that I'm excited about this week is that on Saturday, we're doing the next paint along. So this Saturday, May 11th, we are doing a expressive watercolor landscape paint along on my Twitch channel. So if you're interested, I will throw the link with info down below in the description. There's going to be lots of links down there, I think, because I have a lot to catch you up on. But yeah, it's always really fun. I think it's like the 34th or 35th paint along that we've done. So we're almost to 3 years actually. Wow, I just realized we're almost to 3 years with paint-alongs. That is so cool. And I'm really looking forward to it because doing expressive landscapes are just really fun and freeing, and we have to like open our mind and be okay with that spontaneity, which is something that I just love about watercolor in general. So hopefully I will see some of you guys there. So just doing the final touches on this painting, I tried to keep it under 15 minutes. I think I went just a little bit over, but still learned a ton. I was a little rusty. I hadn't done gouache in like 2-3 weeks before this one, but yeah, I always learn so much doing these, so it's a really good exercise. And the last thing I do before I take the tape off is do my graphite lines, just to draw a nice little border to keep it nice and crisp on the edges. It's definitely a little easier if you do it before you take the tape off, but sometimes I forget. But then we come to taking the tape off, and it's so nice to see that crisp reveal of that edge. Once in a while, I realize I get like a little bit of paint outside that edge, and I'm like, no! But I just love that peel, that final touch. Anyways, so after this painting, I wanted to show you guys a quick, I guess, recap of what I've been up to lately over the past couple weeks, maybe a month or two now, working on my personal series that is completely inspired by this renewed energy that comes with spring. It's nice to get another piece in the sketchbook after a little while. After all these winter studies, which I'm really glad I did because painting snow is difficult and I learned a lot, but now I'm going to start working my way into spring and summer landscapes. But first, I need to show you how big Vader is getting. My little baby. And you literally do this for hours. Ouch. One thing that has kept me really busy lately is working on, I guess I would call it just a mini series. Or mini paintings. So these are 4x6 and 4x8 inches. And I recently ordered these custom mats for the 4x8s, and I really like how they turned out. I think they just finished them off really nicely. I've been exploring with mixed media, but also just really heavily diving into watercolor again and trying to find a nice balance between control and that spontaneity that I just love with watercolor. So these are some recent pieces. Adding in some ink, maybe some pencil, some salt, and getting some really cool textures. Stuff like this. And some bigger ones that I still have yet to frame. But these are part of my spring series, all inspired by Scotland in the spring, in a variety of sizes that I'm either working on or if it's finished and I just haven't framed it, or I don't know if I want to list it on my shop yet, or yeah. But I've also been using oil and playing with the same idea that I'm using with my watercolor, which is controlled chaos, but trying to get that balance of, I guess I would say there's like aspects of realism and then aspects of like total abstraction, which I love. So there's lots of drips and scrapes, but then sections of the painting will be a little more detailed. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at lately. This is the one I did yesterday. Some of these are available on my shop right now, but other ones I am sort of saving for potentially doing like an art fair or applying to a gallery or a shop somewhere. So I'm kind of holding off on listing some of them, but if you are interested, go check out my shop. I'll put the link in the description below. Yummy texture. So baby. Thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully I won't let too much time go between now and the next video. If you want to keep up with me, make sure to check out the links below in the description. And otherwise, hope you're enjoying the spring.